back to another video. It's an exciting time here for the channel as I recently had the chance to visit Bungie HQ and get some hands-on time with the Edge of Fate early. I want to thank Bungie for having me and all the devs I had the pleasure of interacting with for being so welcoming and receptive to my feedback. A lot of great constructive conversations were had, and I really did come out of it with the perspective that Bungie are doing everything in their power to build the best version of Destiny. I was able to view and cover all sorts of content from the Edge of Fate. I wanted to quickly mention that there is going to be a playlist linked in the top right of the screen now where you can find all my content and videos related to the upcoming Edge of Fate DLC. From new exotics, endgame weapons, PvE abilities and mechanics, builds, new origin traits, different tiers of loot, you name it, you can find it all here in one condensed playlist. However, this particular video is going to be exclusively focused on the stat rework and the implications that it will have within the Crucible. Quick disclaimer, this obviously is all on a test build and all of these numbers are subject to change before the Edge of Fate releases on July 15th. I'm excited to bring you an early breakdown of such an important game system within the Edge of Fate, so let's take a look at what's changing and what's the difference between a tier 2 gear set like this and an endgame tier 5 gear set like this. So let's not waste any time and let's get into it. We're starting off with a pretty major change. As you all know, we've always had 3 set stats for movement, health, and healing within Destiny: mobility, resilience, and recovery. These stats also influence the cooldown rate of your class ability depending on which class you are playing. However, this is no longer the case. The first big change in the Edge of Fate's perfected buildcrafting system is that Bungie have scrapped these 3 stats entirely from the game. How do these stats work now? Well, we'll have a standard HP value of 230, which is what was previously 10 resilient. Recovery is apparently the same as what 100 used to be, however in the build we were playing, this may have been bugged as it did feel much slower. I spoke to a dev about this and the plan is to have everyone at the current 100 recovery rate when the Edge of Fate drops. This instantly makes our Guardian stronger and frees up some stat points to invest elsewhere to tailor our builds towards our specific playstyles. We're no longer required to be pushing stats into 100 recovery or certain resilience thresholds to survive certain damage combinations in the Crucible anymore. Mobility was also standardized, however they didn't bump this to the max like the other 2. Base mobility will be set to what was previously 30, however there is a new leg mod called Enhanced Athletics that can be applied to boost this by another plus 30, meaning with just one mod on your boots you'll be at 60 mobility. I did also ask for clarification about this with a dev, and although there is diminishing returns, this mod does stack, so if you really wanted to get your old mobility back, having 3 of these enhanced athletic mods would put you at what used to be 90 mobility. However, I personally don't think that's worth the investment at all. As of right now in the Crucible, it feels essential to be running better already or recuperation on your boots, which will no longer be the case. It will absolutely be worth running an enhanced athletics mod, but we'll get back to that in a moment. Previously with our Destiny 2 builds, we've had a scaling 0 to 100 amount split into 10 tiers. Every 10 points you invest, you get a bonus. Whether that's in the form of a reduced cooldown, increased charge rate, overall HP, a higher investment has always had a linear scale to improve that specific statistic. I really like the change Bungie have made in the Edge of Fate, and it feels like builds will become far more tailored to the player. Possibly the biggest change coming to the Edge of Fate's buildcrafting is that there is no longer such a thing as a wasted stat point. This might be a little hard to comprehend at first, so I'm going to use the most simple numbers I could find to showcase this. If we take a look at the weapon stat here and ignore the enhanced section for a second, we can see that the regular 100 points in the weapon stat gives a 10% buff to reload and handling. This gives us a nice, easy round number to work with. So let's say, for example, we were stuck at an odd number, like 69 in the weapon stat. In the old system, you would have 6 completed tiers and 9 wasted stats, which would have been a simple 6% buff to reload and handling and no benefit from the other 9 points. The way this is now going to work, updated in the Edge of Fate, is that the wasted stats don't exist anymore, and instead you would end up with a 6.9% buff to handling and reload speed, meaning those 9 stats are still benefiting you in some way. I love this change, and although I'm going to miss flexing my 0 wasted stats knucklehead build, I love that every single point I have is going to go towards increasing my power and efficiency in some way. Stats now all go from 0 to 200. The first 100 points will work in a similar way to the previous system, and any investment over 100 will actually enhance that stat and give you an entirely different bonus. Let's break down each of these stats and what the bonus is from 0 to 100, and then the enhanced benefit from investing upwards of 100. We'll also be given some values for the 200 bonuses. As a stat, we now have health. Investing into this stat does not increase your health. You will always have a flat global 230 HP in the Crucible. Any points you invest into health from 0 to 100 will increase the amount of HP you gain when you pick up an orb, which is why I was saying better already and recuperation are no longer essential. This investment is also a scaling flinch reduction. At 100 points, you'll receive a global minus 10% flinch. Any investment over 100 states that your shields recharge more quickly, and you will have additional health when facing combatants. This is obviously a PvE thing. Combatants always means PvE. I asked the developer if the shield recharge thing was influencing the amount of time before you start to regenerate, or if it influenced how quickly you do regenerate once that process has already started. The answer was that it's actually a combination of the two. Both the speed of the regen and the time before starting the regeneration are both impacted by the enhanced health stat. As for our abilities, it's a bit more straightforward. However, it is worth mentioning that they've been renamed. The strength stat is now just called melee. What used to be discipline is now grenade, and what used to be intellect has been simplified into just super. For all three of these stats, the first 100 points will influence the cooldown rate of the ability just like the old system used to, but now any enhanced investment over 100 will cause the corresponding ability to do increased damage. I do wish I got a little more time in PvP to test some of these damage combinations, like it would have been cool to see the one-shot potential of sticky grenades or trip mines, but we only had a couple of hours. Now we have an entirely new stat, class. As I mentioned, the class abilities cooldown were previously tied to our 3 core stats. We now have a stat that determines this individually. The enhanced benefit of the class stat is also very interesting to me. However, don't worry, I know you're hearing this and worried that it sounds overpowered straight away. Enhancing your class stats over 100 will mean that whenever you use a class ability, you're granted an overshield, of which the over health HP amount scales depending on how much you've invested. From our testing, we didn't go all the way to 200, but it was rarely above like a 20 HP overshield. Now for the stat that I am by far the most excited for is the new weapons stat. Any points between 0 and 100 will give you a bonus to weapon reload and handling speeds. The scale is straightforward, 100 points is 10%. The enhanced weapon stat is what's really interesting to me. Any enhanced investment into the weapon stat will give you a straight up damage increase in PvP. Like you can literally have a damage buff that's larger than current Radiant just for investing points into your build. I know this sounds like a crazy stat investment to really focus something that high, but I want to know everything you've seen so far on screen is with a tier 2 gear set. So for those of you hunting endgame loot, the flexes among us, here's what a full tier 5 will look like. I will have another video breaking down loot tiers for both weapons and armor that goes into depth about set bonuses, etc. in a lot more detail. That will be linked at the end of this video and in the top right of the screen now if you want to just open up a tab and check it out after. I wanted to quickly show you what a build is going to look like for endgame players though. This is more relevant to our gear video, but a quick note, let's take a look at this tuning slot that is exclusive to tier 5 legendary armor. As we can see, this Bushido cow helmet has the 3 lines next to the health stat. This shows that health is the stat we can influence using the tuning slot. So now we have 2 options. The first option we're going to refer to as plus and minus tuning. Whatever stat the specific piece of gear is randomly rolled to be attuned to, we have the ability to sacrifice another stat of our choice and give it an even larger bump. For example, if we use this plus health and minus super tuning mod, we would be taking 5 points away from our super stat and bumping it into an additional 5 health. From my understanding and what the devs explained, I did ask them about this, the stat that rolls on these is completely random. Our other option here is balanced tuning. If we decide we don't want to lose 5 in another stat, or maybe our health stat is plenty high enough and we don't care to get the additional 5 stat points, we also have the simple option of bumping +1 into the 3 current lowest stats on this piece of gear. This gives us an overall +3 stats with no drawback. This would have been a nightmare before in the old tier system, but now that wasted stats don't exist anymore and every point is helping in some way, it's a nice and welcomed addition. There is other things to get into for gear, such as the brand new armor archetypes and set bonuses, but we'll leave that more detailed explanation in our dedicated Edge of Fate gear tiers video. With how much customization there is in this new system, I really do not envy the guys over at D2 Armor Picker having to update the tool for this new system, but I wanted to give them a shout out for always getting our builds in good shape because we aren't smart enough to do it ourselves. So those are the major stat changes coming in the Edge of Fate. It's pretty drastic, but I think I actually love it, and I do think Buildcrafting might have found its final form. Sure, some numbers may need changing over time, but I do think it's a net positive. The previous system for a PvP player needing to instantly make a build and pump 100 recovery, then depending on the class, hunters would invest into mobility, titans would invest in resilience. It was definitely just a flawed system. I do have a slight concern that hunter usage rates will go up even more. They were the only class that ever needed to invest in mobility, so often they'd have to sacrifice some resilience. No longer having the need to do that and just getting a global 230 HP pool, irrelevant of class, does seem like there's very little drawback to playing hunter. Either way, I'm excited to see how it unfolds and think that this will lead to more playstyles and variety in the Crucible. I wish I could have got into a little bit more detail about these enhanced bonuses and what you can do to optimize certain abilities and weapon archetypes to optimize time to kills against 230 HP Guardians, as now everyone's going to be at that flat rate. However, I do think it's really nice to know that the same damage combos will guarantee a kill now. I definitely didn't love the feeling of like 3-tapping a Titan and then inspecting them to see they had 1 more resilience than I was thinking, so my kill wasn't guaranteed. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to drop a like and a sub. If you're interested in seeing more Edge of Fate content early, like the Trials loot, Origin perks, Tier 5 gear, whatever it is, then be sure to check out the playlist on the final screen. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.